Well, severe weather has been lacking across the plains, a spot that should be seeing the peak of activity in the month of June, but there might be some signs of change, at least temporarily, in sight. So we're in a pretty large area of drought across the plains. So this is part of the problem. We're not even seeing a lot of rain, so of course there isn't going to be a lot of storms. That's where the majority of rain comes from this time of year, and that extends from Texas all the way up through Minnesota, Wisconsin, into the Ohio River Valley. Basically, most of the area you see in drought is the area that should be seeing peak activity of severe weather for this time of year, May, June, into early July. Specifically, the central and northern plains, including Minnesota, which averages more tornadoes than Texas, even though it's a smaller state in the month of June. This isn't adjusted for per capita basis. Minnesota still averages more. But we've seen a severe lack of activity in the northern plains specifically, but even in the central plains. So this is the probability of severe weather within any given point on the summer solstice. And you can see a bullseye, Nebraska, Kansas, and then really much of the central and northern plains into Wisconsin and the Ohio River Valley. And this is showing where we've had severe thunderstorm watches so far this season. Confined to the south, a density of them across Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. Now, some of this is when you add up all the winter watches, and we're still heading into the just peak of the season for the northern plains. But still, if we just look at the last 10 days as an example, peak activity should be in this red circle. This is kind of that climatological bullseye, and most of that activity is well to the south of that here, except for a couple of brief instances. When we look at reports year to date, we were doing pretty good. 2023 was ahead of normal, and then we fell behind here. Basically, once we hit this drought that expanded in the northern plains, May into June. This is looking at this year compared to last year. And specifically, I've outlined May, June, which should be the peak for the plains. You can see last year followed a pretty normal pattern where you had a lot of reports in May and June, but this year, lackluster. It was heavier earlier in the season and in the spring, but not necessarily in the plains. And again, a good example, look at Minnesota, a place that's kind of on the northern edge of Tornado Alley. Last year, they had a record pace of severe reports up through May. This year, one of the lowest since we've kept track of those records. So pretty incredible to see back-to-back years very different. And this has been part of the reason, a split flow. This is the jet stream. We've had a jet far to the north above this heat bubble that's been kind of back and forth in central North America, and then another jet stream to the south, the subtropical jet remaining abnormally strong for this time of year, and lots of shear here where that jet stream is. So it's been Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas. That's why we've been seeing the bulk of the severe weather to the south. And kind of this split in the heat dome occasionally that's led to that sort of split flow in the jet stream. So this was looking at the average 500 millibar or middle atmospheric pressure pattern for May. You had that big heat dome across Canada into the northern plains, and that was the culprit for splitting that jet stream up. Now, in the current weather pattern, we do have a pretty long area of low pressure developing from Texas all the way up into southern Canada, blocked right now by the heat dome, but this is an area that is seeing the focus of some showers and thunderstorms and will be for severe weather over the next several days. Still not a favorable pattern because we've got this upper level ridge, that heat dome still that extends from Texas and Mexico all the way up to Hudson Bay. And it is kind of split right now, sandwiched between two areas of upper level low pressure, which is cool air aloft, clouds, lots of stormy weather, northwest, southeast. So we still have kind of this split flow, a subtropical jet around that southern branch of the heat, and then another jet stream branch here between that northwest low and the heat bubble across Canada. But watch what happens over the next couple of days. We see those two jets kind of merge into one stronger, amplified jet stream headed right towards the northern plains as we head into the weekend, and might remain that way at least into next week. So the possibility of seeing severe weather will at least increase heading into the end of the week and the weekend for the northern plains. Today, slight risk for parts of the northern plains, western Nebraska, but down into Texas still. A very small area of a decent tornado risk to watch from Wyoming into northern Colorado, western Nebraska. But then heading into the next couple of days, we're going to see that area of risk for severe weather expand and move a little bit further northward. We're not talking about really impressive stuff, but something that we haven't been seeing a whole lot of so far this month of June. So the slight risk tomorrow, again, a small area, Colorado, Wyoming, but as we head into Friday, starts to expand into areas we would expect in the middle of June. More of Nebraska, South Dakota, back into Wyoming. And while it is still very early, the weekend at least, we are watching where we would very much expect severe weather to be on any given day in the middle of June. Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, Minnesota, which has seen an extreme lack of severe weather so far this season. So again, a lot has to come together yet for it to be a real active day, but some signs that severe weather could be returning to the northern plains at least temporarily in the future.